just as well we're kind of I can reassemble these ones because oh yeah, I leave the whole knitting thing now. You think about these back here? Okay. Sorry? Well, I've got 22 knitters on stage, and they're already knitting now. So I've got 5 soloists, the 5 that we're going to have rehearsal. But then we were flooded over with people who wanted to knit on stage in New York. And the master team was like, the festival team said, well, it's a shame not to use them. So now I've got a knitting orchestra as well. Oh. They're already knitting. Andy, why don't you get into this? Look, this is all. It's like right here. It's almost like teachers do. That's my sister. No, see that? Charles doing something. Because as soon as they touch, they will make a sound. So if I say stop, please keep the needles somehow apart. Is there more to it? I don't know. Can we have the results? I keep calm. Yeah, I'm not starting yet. No, I think it's really, really easy. Do you want to? You don't have to. Don't worry. Commissioned by Marta Festival in New York to write a new piece for their festival. And the Marta Festival is co-founded by Fishguard, amongst others. And it's a very renowned festival. It's a complete honour of them to trust me that I'm able to do such a thing. And I'm a bit of a wild card, I heard, for them. Because in 15 years' time that the festival exists, they've never commissioned anyone that they're not really sure what they're going to get. And up until now, they haven't heard what it's going to be, but they were very enthusiastic about it and getting me knitters in and all that. So I am very grateful for the freedom they gave me to make this. This piece is called KillingTime, and it's very influenced by my surroundings, by the outdoors here. So Puthderry is a place that I love. It's completely Pembrokeshire, and I've used concrete music elements in my compositions before, for instance sports exercises, but now I've chosen knitters because the problem I had with using non-musical elements in my music, if you use samplers, instruments like that, they will repeat everything very in a beat way. So you hear a click and then it goes click, 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 which is not very organic. And if you hear the sounds here in Pembrokeshire of natural soundscapes, they occur every now and then. They're not as regulated. If you hear the rustling of leaves in a tree or the birds calling, you know that the birds are there, but you don't never know when they're going to call. And I thought, how can I sort of do that in my music? And knitters come in because knitting needles are two metal needles, so when they connect, they act as a switch, on off, on off, on off. And so when these people are knitting, it goes to my computer and it causes a lot of trigger points. And these trigger points can activate samples, but not in a very structured way, in a very random way. And either you use a lot of trigger points to trigger a lot of samples and you get a dance texture, like the rustling of paper, which usually is a very short-lived sound, but I can make it now as long as I want. Or I can trigger very sparsely the sound. I can make these choices in the computer, and then you can recreate a soundscape, such as Puthberry. I sit there very often, and you hear absolutely nothing, and it's like it hasn't changed since prehistoric times. And you're just waiting for the oyster catchers to come, but sometimes you can wait quite a long time and they don't come on. So that's the story, and by recreating these soundscapes, I want to learn from a natural soundscape. So, because there's a certain timing to it, which is not a timing I'm used to. In classical music, timings are in bars: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. And by recreating these soundscapes, I just want to sort of educate myself, teach myself to try to translate that back into classical music and conventional instruments again. So, the piece is Killing Time, about killing time, but it's also about getting rid of the bars, and in conventional music it refers a lot to it, in every possible way. I've got 5 knitters, these are live. There is an imaginary Vicky Chow pianist, she's there. Then there is on Mujang Yang Yi, imaginary. Then there is on clarinet, oh, we changed someone, it was Caroline, somebody else, sorry. And there's on cello Alex Waterman. Welcome too. So I will be pointing, this is about, I've never conducted in my life before. So I'm following my score, checking out whether the score is actually working, whether the machine is actually working, whether the knitting is working. It's all not tested, the performance is next week. And, I will also be pointing out to the imaginary musicians, just to see if I can remember to do everything. And maybe we stop in the middle of it, or maybe everything explodes, who knows. And we start with a prelude, which is, when you hear classical instruments, that's the prelude to the Killing Time piece. Because all in all we've got 22 knitters on stage, 5 soloists and the rest are an orchestra. And I wanted to include them in the piece, but they are not in the composition. So I came up with a prelude that the orchestra is knitting. With microphones you hear the actual knitting sound. And then only the 5 knitters are knitting with them as well. And you hear them actually doing orchestral instruments, which is a bit of a pun because the instruments are actually not doing anything at that time, but you do hear very contemporary classical music that is done with knitters. Right, let's see if it works. So the knitter orchestra starts now just with microphone, and then you come in. Alright, yes, you have to stop the ball.